and welcome back. Today's review is probably the least motivated review I've ever had to do. To start with, it is Outlander by Gabaldon. This book took many years off of my life. I thought it started super strong. I heard nothing but good things about the series and about the television series, so I said, let's try it. So I read the book. Very quickly, I realized as good as the writing is, as good as the world building is, I didn't care for the novel. I didn't care for the plot, or in my opinion, the lack thereof. I also had two really big issues. One is, as good as the world building is, I thought we lacked a lot of historical value. The fact that the main character travels back in time and has a very, very small window before she adjusts to the fact that she went back 300, 200 years in time. I was like, I need my adjustment period. I need all the things that she misses, all the things that she has to do without, all the cultural differences that she doesn't understand, and all the mistakes she makes because of it. Women were treated very differently in the 1700s than they were in the 1900s. It's like the whole women's lib movement. There's no such thing. You have no rights. You are property. So the fact that she doesn't have any of that, it took me out of the story. And then the other thing is, the main plot, at least of the first novel, is she is married. The main character's name is Claire. She is from the 1940s era. Her husband goes off to fight in World War II. She is a nurse, and she goes off to nurse in World War II. And then they come back together. They're on their second honeymoon, at which point she gets thrown back in time. And she has to marry a man in order to evade some issues. How many times does she think about her husband, Frank? How many times does it even cross her mind that she's cheating on him? How many times does she care? Maybe 3. At the very beginning, when she encounters one character, when she has to marry the second character, actually maybe 4, because I think she does think about him like once more. But then at the very end, and she has a conversation with a monk, and I greatly disagreed with this conversation, but she has a conversation with a monk about, has she been cheating on her husband, and he says, well, technically, you married this guy before you married that guy, meaning the guy in the 1700s, she technically married before the guy from the 1900s. I'm like, not really. Timeline-wise, yes, but she was born in a different time. She got married in her timeline. So the guy from the past, she did marry second. So I had a huge issue with this whole adultery thing. I liked their romance. I truly did. I thought they had a lot of chemistry together, and I did root for them as a couple. I liked him especially, but the fact that it just kind of felt like 50 Shades of Grey in the 1700s Scottish Highlands. Like, it was all about sex. And not to say that was a bad thing, but like, what was the substance and what glued them together? And the other thing is, the Scottish guy, whose name is Jamie, the fact that he saved himself for marriage, it felt like a bit of a historical inaccuracy, because this whole novel is about plundering and rape, and he himself getting sexually assaulted by other men. And so I was like, why do we have this one shining star of a man with all these morals when literally nobody else has these same morals and values? Like, what set it aside for him? Like, really, like, because I can take it. I love it. I love the fact that he wanted a woman. He wanted to wait for this woman. I think that's awesome. But it's so out of touch with the world around him. And not to say that he wasn't tempted, but what was it that caused him to stand firm? Anyways, back to the very beginning. I just needed to get that out there. because this book I held on until the midpoint. This was a 33-hour read. It took me probably 3 weeks, largely because I listen in my car, and my drive to work is only 7 minutes, so I don't have a lot of time in my car. And my showers are like 7 minutes as well, so I just didn't, and then I wasn't invested enough to want to keep turning this book on and listening to it. But it took 33 hours of my life, and as I said earlier, it felt like years. But by the midpoint, I realized I wasn't going to get what I was looking for. I was not going to get that in-depth story, that the world building that I was looking for, the connection that I thought would have made the story better for me. We are in the 1940s. Claire Fraser and her husband Frank are in Inverness, I believe. Yes, they are in Inverness. World War II has just ended, and this is their second honeymoon, because I guess they had gotten married not long before World War II, and so they're coming together, they're reconnecting. I was under the completely wrong impression as to the fact that her husband had not died at some point before she got thrown back in time. I would have preferred he had died, because then it would have been easier to swallow her marrying another man and it not be cheating on her husband, and her not thinking about her husband would not have been an issue. But anyways, they are celebrating their second honeymoon. There is a slight discussion, which could have been something of a foreshadowing if I thought about it, about did he ever stray, because she definitely let her wandering eye stray. Nothing ever happened, but she acknowledged that affairs happened in the field because it was a very tense time full of high emotions, and nurses falling in love or soldiers falling in love with their nurses wasn't unheard of. Neither one of them had actually strayed, but it's not for lack of temptation, not for lack of opportunity. They're here, and it's, all about their sex life too. So I guess Claire just has a thing for the physical, which, totally fine. It's her husband. That's great, but yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of development in my opinion, but this was the strongest part of the novel for me, because I had connected with a new author, I believe she's a self-published author, on Instagram, and I was able to not beta read, but ARC read a novel for her, and this novel has time travel as well. The one thing that kind of threw me off is the main character is in modern day. She's on her bike and she hydroplanes into the woods, and all of a sudden she's in another time period. For me, it was jarring because there was no setup, except for the fact that the premise of the book. There was no setup that really made sense for her to be point A and then all of a sudden in point B. But here, I thought Gabaldon did a really great job of setting up something kind of eerie and mystical. For one, the traditions of the townsfolk. They honor age-old traditions, and I can't forget exactly what it was. It wasn't the Passover, but there's a certain point in the novel where they're coming back to the place they're staying and they see blood on the doorstep. It's just some kind of a tradition to honor or recognize. It was something about ancestry and protecting the home with animal blood and blah, blah, blah. And then we have this other thing where the women, again, I can't remember exactly what they, not celebrating, but what their ritual was for. But you just get a lot of this setup about the past and how the present is honoring the past, and how Scotland has traditions and Scotland can be slightly mysterious. At some point, she goes off with a tour guide, and this tour guide is showing her all about local plants and areas, and he takes her to me in my head, it's like a Stonehenge, like this circle of stones. Meanwhile, her husband Frank has connected with somebody because he's really interested in his genealogy. When they come back, she's like, oh my gosh, I know something you'd really like. We just have to go back to that circle of stones, which I can never remember what it's called. I keep saying it wrong, but it is Crownadun. Crownadun. And there is another character in here. I absolutely cannot say her name for the life of me. But Crownadun, I always want to say Duna. Crownadun is the circle of stones. So they go up there, and I forget exactly what happens, but there's like this buzzing or something, and she ends up kind of stumbling into the circle of stones, which throws her back in time. She comes back in time, and she sees all these guys dressed up in historical garb, and she's like, what's happening here? Maybe they're filming a movie. And then she gets found by an English soldier, and she's like, I know him. That's that's my husband, but it's not my husband. It turns out this is Frank's ancestor, and his name is Jonathan Randall, although I believe everybody calls him Jack or just Captain Randall. Yeah, he's not a good guy. He is the main antagonist in this entire novel, and there's like 9 novels in this series, and I was fully gung-ho because when I read the synopses, I was like, okay, I'm digging what's happening here, but I will never last 33 hours of each book facing the same things over and over, because that's another complaint I had, was how in the world did they keep encountering Captain Randall and his men? I didn't understand why these guys were there, and how in this vast landscape she kept having run-ins with them. And that's neither here nor there, but it's probably more on me than Gabaldon's writing, but at some point it felt more just like a plot device than a natural happenstance. So she meets him, and he is going to have his way with her, only for her to get rescued by some other dude. This other dude turns out to be Scottish, and he takes her back to his people, who end up being the Mackenzie clan, and this is where Jamie is from. Like, he is a descendant. He's a second cousin, 8th removed. Not really, but this is his family. He's just not a Mackenzie. He is a Fraser, which I think I said her name was Fraser. It's not Fraser. Her last name is Randall. She gets taken to them, and they're very skeptical of her, especially because she's scantily clad. And so Randall is going to think that she's a spy, and then their leader, Colin Mackenzie, is going to think she's a spy. But in the meantime, she is able to use her nursing skills to help Jamie, who has been injured. Again, I thought that was a great setup. Like, so far, I'm totally with it. She has a skill set that is becoming useful. She has a skill set that is keeping her from essentially being killed. But they say, well, we got to take her back to Colum and let Colum decide what to do with her, because she's an Englishman or an English woman, and this is essentially a battle between the English and Scots. They get to Castle Leoch, which is the Mackenzie clan's residence. She's waiting around, and eventually they have this, not dinner, but it's evening time, and everybody's gathering, and it's kind of like when people would come to the king and queen, and they would bring their grievances or whatnot and have things ruled on them. So it's kind of like that, where all the people have done something wrong, or maybe even something right. He metes out punishments. So the first thing we see is this young girl. I forget what she did, but she did something, and she's going to be lashed. And Jamie's like, you know what, I'm going to take her punishment for her. So instead of lashing him, he just gets beaten up, after which she ends up, again, being his nursemaid. But she is deemed kind of a non-threat, but she is also pressed into labor as their medical personnel, their doctor, their physician, because I guess their last physician, I think he had died or something. She's a bit appalled at all of his tools and his methods, which, hey, this is a little glimpse into history, into how they used to treat maladies. But for the most part, we really got none of that. I felt like it was more about the nature and how none of this was here in her time, and so it's just so beautiful and so peaceful and, you know, so simple. But we don't get to the heart of how these people lived and how things were different and how she had to adjust. Nothing even about the food. Nothing like, ooh, I'm not gonna eat that, and like, ooh, what is this? Like, nothing. She just kind of went with it. Where I'm just like, shower? Can I brush my teeth? Can I wash my underwear? Like, what am I wearing? All this kind of stuff where even I don't feel safe. Why are these people looking at me? What do I say? What did I say? All these little things that I think would have established the world a bit better and her place in it. Rather, it was like, oh, I definitely time traveled. Okay. Literally, she came to this realization 20 pages in. Well, not maybe 20 pages, but maybe 20 pages into traveling back in time. She put those pieces together, and that was it. There was no culture shock. There was no shock whatsoever. No, like, what in the heck happened? Only her realizing that buzzing sound that she heard at Cragnadun, yeah, that was what happened. Like, that's how she got from there to here. But there was nothing about, oh my gosh, I have to get back to my husband. Oh my gosh, I don't belong here. Oh my gosh. Like, nothing. Like, they barely even remark on her clothing, only to say that she's half naked. Like, her regular 1940s clothes were the equivalent to 1700 women's undergarments. And that was it. Anyways, now she is settling into life at Castle Leoch. She does walk in on Jamie and the girl whose name I cannot pronounce. I can't even remember her name half the time because it's too complicated for me. However, so I had read her name before I started listening to the novel. And when I started listening to the novel, I didn't even recognize her name when it was pronounced. So I'm sure it's just me. Like, the Scottish pronunciation and spelling does not compute from my eyes to my brain because it's not what I'm used to. But it's a much simpler name than I'm going to make it. And her name is Laguerre? We'll just call her Laguerre. Or not even, I don't know. I don't even know what kind of nickname to give her to do her justice. But we meet, she stumbles across these two kind of having an intimate moment in the barn. And Claire's like, huh, okay, well, I guess this is his sweetheart or something. And not long after this, there's an oath-taking ceremony. And I was kind of lost as how we got here, but she had decided, I'm gonna sneak out and get back to Cragnadun. I told you, I can never remember. Cragnadun. She's on her way, only for Jamie to find her, and then they are stumbled upon by this group of men who are going to take place in this oath-taking ceremony, and it's called the Gathering. So as I said, this is Jamie's family, but his mother was a Mackenzie. He's a Fraser. And so he does not swear allegiance to the Mackenzies. He swears allegiance to the Frasers. So he wasn't even planning on going to this oath-taking ceremony. But now that the men have stumbled across him, he has no option. We see him getting very smooth with his words and basically saying, look, I don't pledge allegiance to you guys, but I do pledge to respect and honor and fight for you. Basically saying, I'm not family, I'm not under your thumb, but I am friendly to you. I am sympathetic to you, and whatever it takes to protect you and to be on your side, I will be part of that, but my first allegiance is somewhere else. We go through this, and she's like, wow, Jamie, like, way to wiggle out of that one, only for them to then be told by Callum that he's going to send them off to collect rents with his brother Dougal. The thing about Callum is that he suffers from some kind of malady. I can't remember what it is. Claire recognizes it immediately, but it has something to do with his twisted legs, and then this therefore means he is also sterile. However, he's got a son, and his son's name is Hamish. She's thinking that maybe Jamie fathered this son. I think the kid's like 8 or something. We get this whole thing. He thinks that she is an English spy, and he wants to send her off with his brother Dougal to have an eye on her, to get some information on her, see what happens with her. So yeah, she's not really necessary to any of this, but it's the ploy to have somebody keep an eye on her. And then Jamie is going along for the ride because Dougal is a Jacobite. I was so lost when it came to this. It has been almost 20 years since I was in a history class, but apparently the Jacobites wanted to, and I'm going to use my nose like nobody's business, and this might even be a 3-part review, but the Jacobites, they want to overthrow the current British monarch in favor of somebody who would be more sympathetic to the Scottish. Dougal, his underlying intention is, yeah, I'm going to collect rent from our people, but I'm also trying to collect money for our cause. And Jamie, so the guy that Claire had met when she first went back in time, Jack Randall, he's a no good piece of work. Like, she did a great job with him, but he had arrested Jamie some years prior because Jamie was accused of killing a British soldier. Jamie says, I'm not guilty. And it turns out that word on the street is Randall actually killed this guy. But anyways, Jamie was supposed to die or whatever, but he had his flogging, and then he was going to have another flogging because Randall was upset that he didn't get to do the first flogging because, all right, I don't know what Randall's sexual orientation is supposed to be. I think he's homosexual. He does take advantage of women. He does assault women, but only when they're putting up a fight. He's not sexually aroused by women. He's sexually aroused by violence. And so he wants Jamie. He wants to have sex with Jamie, and Jamie's like, I don't think so. Then, so this is all in that thing. So years and years and years prior, he's got Jamie at his home in Lallybrook. And so Jamie is, I forget exactly what Jamie does, but Jamie sticks up for somebody and then he intervenes on his sister's behalf. Randall is like, if you want your brother to be okay, you're gonna let me take you inside and do with you what I want. So this is essentially his last impression of his sister and Randall, because then he is knocked out. But he has been accused of killing a British soldier, and so he's on the run. He's been on the run for, I don't know, 15 years or something. Maybe not that long. I think he's only 24. So like 6 years, 7, 8 years, because he was 16, 15 around that time. Anyways, or maybe a little, it doesn't really matter. He's been on the run for years. Also, we got an insight into when she was home in the 1940s, how he was a decorated war hero of sorts, but it seems that all the things that he'd done wrong, he was never held accountable for, and like all of a sudden, there's just nothing on him whatsoever. I forget where I was going with that. I remember where all that was going. Dougal wants to use Jamie as an example because of the beating he had received when he tried to intervene for his sister with Randall, because of all the scarring on his back. Jamie didn't know this was going to happen. Jamie not exactly happy about it. So somewhere along these lines, Dougal decides that he's going to take Claire to the British because he wants to know if she's an English spy, because she has said she's French. Her familial ancestry had French roots, so she had given a French name, not wanting anybody to think that she's related to Randall. Along the journey, she had also met the McCallum's lawyer, this guy named Ned, and Ned is a pretty upstanding guy, and he has no allegiance to the current Mackenzies. He had an allegiance to Callum and Dougal's dad, but he's kind of a package deal with the Mackenzies, so he's going along just making sure everything is copacetic with the money. But Dougal, he takes Claire to the British, only to find out that Randall is there. So here is instance number 2 with Randall. Well, Randall beats the tar out of her, only to then be rescued by the Scottish and taken back. And this is when she's informed, look, because Randall is like, well, I'm going to talk to you again. So this is when the Scots say, the only way to protect you is to have you marry one of us, because that way you are no longer an Englishwoman. The English have no rights to you. I don't understand any of this, honestly. I don't know how that works, but, you know, if it gets her out of Randall's clutches, I'm all for it. So she then is promised to Jamie. They get married. Wouldn't you know it, in the church that she and Frank would be married in 200 years later. And this is honestly, outside of just arriving and being like, wow, that dude sure looks like my husband. This is the second time that she has thought about Frank. She's like, I can't marry Jamie in this church because I feel like that would be dishonoring to Frank. That's about all we get in terms of her thinking about Frank and the fact that she's married to Frank, and that anything that she does from this moment forward is adultery. I don't care that she and Jamie are actually married. She was married first. And I think the one thing that would have made it acceptable for me is if she was like, I know he and I are married, but this doesn't feel right. I feel like this would upset Frank. Anything. But we get nothing. So they get married, and now it's their wedding night, and Jamie's like, well, marriage isn't legal unless we consummate it. Well, duh. Like, how long has that been the case? Everybody knows that a marriage can be annulled if it's not consummated. For the plot of the novel, though, this is really just because they like to screw like jackrabbits. Like, this entire novel is just about them having sex. And for me, I'm like, how would anybody know? Except it turns out that the next morning she opens the door, not realizing that every single man in the Mackenzie clan was like basically right outside her door. So they heard everything. So I guess that's where Gabaldon was going here, was that these guys would know. So they have basically amazing sex, even though he was a virgin. This is when he learns that women don't always want it done from behind. They do like it when men are on top, or that they are even on top. So yeah, this could have been all right because it's a cultural difference. It's something that he wouldn't know because for whatever reason, he chose to stay abstinent and he wasn't talking to the other men, or maybe all the things that the other men were saying was, this is how you do it with a woman. So I thought that could have been a great opportunity for them to bond. It's a lot, as much as I liked Jamie and as much as I thought they had great chemistry, their entire relationship was based on the physical. This is also when both Claire and Jamie admit, well, Jamie says, I've been wanting you for some time, and Claire's like, and I've been fighting my feelings. I really hated cliche. I expected more from Gabaldon than that. You got it. Like, you understood that she had an attraction to him, but I didn't need it to come out that way. I wish that somehow her recognition of her feelings could have been a lot less cliche. They're on their way and they're attacked by raiders, which I don't really understand who these raiders were. I think they were just poor men. It's kind of like they have skirmishes all the time, and The Mackenzies are completely familiar with the people who attacked them. They come out the victors from this skirmish, and Jamie and Claire have hot and heavy sex on a rock. After which, I think she feels used and abused because he was aroused by the adrenaline and the fighting and all that stuff. I don't know. There's something later on that I guess we're setting up for. But because of this, she had no way to defend herself. So the Mackenzies are like, we gotta teach you how to defend yourself. So we're gonna teach you how to use a dirk. They have this afternoon of dagger practice, and they teach her all of the best methods to disarm and kill a man. She and Jamie go off and, continue their honeymoon phase, only to be discovered by two British deserters. Apparently this is something that in the show is different than in the book. So in the book, she's on the verge of being assaulted by one of these soldiers, at which point she pulls out her dirk and she murders him. Apparently in the show, it's not an almost situation. I'm like, why would you do this to people? This is disgusting enough. And then you're going to have her actually assaulted? Yeah, so she kills the guy, and Jamie's feeling bad because he should have known. I'm like, I don't really care. Like, you literally were watching her almost get assaulted with your pants down. But whatever. And then she meets Hugh Monroe, who I forget what happened to him. He is I think he's Jamie's godfather, actually. But Hugh Monroe had his tongue cut out, so he doesn't speak. And their communication and his roughness, his gruffness, are off-putting to Claire, so she doesn't really like him. Apparently, people love him in the show, but I mean, I'd have to watch the show to truly get a good read on this, but he was a non-entity in the book. I think he was intended to be something of a non-entity in the show, but you can tell I work too much. Viewers connected with the actor and his portrayal of Hugh Monroe so much that they gave his character more storyline than he actually has. And what happens next was something that I don't know. I was bored out of my ever-loving mind during this novel. So it's probably that. It could be the fact that I was driving, but I did not really understand what was going on here. But at this point, so they're still collecting taxes. But here, Jamie and the guys want to go to do something, and Jamie doesn't want her to come. What happens is that I only know because I was reading other people's reviews and synopses just so that I could remember what happened in this novel. But he was looking for information to help prove his innocence in regards to murdering the English soldier. So they are gonna go off to find this dude, and he's like, you need to stay here. I don't want you to come with me. So she's hanging out, she's promised. She's like, look, I'm not going anywhere. I won't follow you, even though she's determined not to let him out of her sight. She's like, where you go, I go. But she gives in, and while she's hanging around, she realizes, I know where I am. I'm pretty close to Cragnadun. I'm just gonna go over there. So she walks along a river. She's trying to cross the river, falls into the river, and she's drowning. She is then rescued by, Corporal Lieutenant Hawkins, one of Randall's minions. So now we meet Randall for the third time. And she is in the midst of defacing his property when he comes in, and he is going to assault her, and she is ready for it. But then she realizes he can't get it up if she doesn't put up a fight. This is when it's solidified that Randall gets excited by violence, which I thought we could have done a lot more with him. He felt kind of fleshed out, but only in one or two ways. I don't know why he was such a despicable person. I just know he likes to take advantage of women. He seems to prefer men, and he's a law unto himself. The Scottish, namely Jamie, rescue her, and they're all angry at her for putting them in danger because, I don't know, I guess now the English know they're there. And for me, the fact that Jamie rescues her when he is something of an outlaw, when he is being pursued by Randall. But yeah, he threatens Randall with an empty pistol and he gets out of Dodge with her. They go back to the hotel and yeah, all the men are ticked at her. Jamie takes her to the room and he's like, so basically, I'm gonna have to spank you. I'm gonna have to flog you because you disobeyed. Like, I told you what would happen if you disobeyed. This is the point where I disconnected from Claire. She felt whiny and shallow and selfish. I know we are not going to agree on punishments involving spanking. I did grow up in a family that spanked. Did I like it? No. Was it effective for me? Yes. Taking away my car keys, it didn't hit me in the sweet spot. Spanking me, yeah, that definitely hit me in the sweet spot. So I was like, I mean, I get it. And he's saying basically what every parent says, I'm not doing this to get pleasure out of it. I'm doing this because this is the consequences for your actions. And she's like, are you kidding me? She doesn't believe he's actually going to do it. And then when she realizes he's serious, she breaks down, in my opinion, not breaks down, but she becomes a petulant child, being like, you can't seriously think you're going to do that to me. That's cruelty, you know, all these things. I'm just like, lady, were you never disciplined? And I think she does harken back because her parents had died when she was young. So she grew up with her archaeologist uncle and he never really disciplined her. So I think she does say something about she really didn't experience much discipline growing up. I know you're a grown adult woman and this is not how we usually punish adults, but again, can you remember where you are, time and place? And this is when, again, it would have been nice if we had established some historical context. We would have really established her and her mindset in the time and place that she now is. It would have been a good moment for her to realize, wow, I forgot where I am. I forgot how they do things. I forgot how different things were. Instead, she was like, I'm never going to talk to you again if you do this. Well, you know, he ends up flogging her, which I think flogging is a very severe term, and I don't remember if that was the term in the book, but that was definitely the term that the other reviewer or who had written a summary used. Yeah, for me, she was just getting a whooping. Flogging and whooping, I think, are totally different. Flogging, I think, is intended for pain and pleasure. A whooping is just intended as punishment. So there we go. Disagree with me if you want, but I disconnected from her at this moment because I was like, you are a spoiled child who doesn't understand when people say there's a consequence for your action. You just feel like you should get away with whatever you want to get away with because that's the way that you want things to go. She's ticked at him. She will not have anything to do with him. I forget if they're headed home or if they're still collecting taxes. Lawyer Ned is never heard from again, but in an attempt to reconcile with her, Jamie gives her some information on his past, and he tells her that he's wanted for murder. He tells her of his past encounter with Randall at his home at Lollybrook and what happened with his sister, and that when he was taken away and he was flogged that time, how Randall was upset that he wasn't the one who got to do the flogging. So Randall was like, I'm gonna flog you a second time. And Jamie barely escaped death the first time, and everybody was like, that's really dangerous. You probably shouldn't whip him. So I wrote this in my notes, and I don't know if it was actually this time or if it was just another time, because I feel like this is a theme that you see. Basically, Randall was like, well, I won't beat you if you sleep with me. And Jamie's like, I'm not sleeping with you. His dad is in the crowd, and he's like, no, I'm not going to sleep with you. I'm just going to get through with this. He is beaten nearly to death. His dad thinks he has died. His dad has a heart attack and dies himself. Thus, Jamie feels guilty. He feels like he caused his dad's death. His mother has already died. I can't remember when, why, or how, but maybe she's not dead yet. At some point, she also dies. But this is how his dad dies. They are also notified that the Duke of Sandringham is coming to Castle Leoch. The Duke, he also prefers men, but apparently he prefers young boys. So Jamie's last encounter with the Duke of Sandringham was when he was 16, and because he had left home to go sort of apprentice with the Mackenzies. When he was 15, 16, he'd had something of a romance with one of his cousins, at which point, I don't know, it was either Callum or Dougal was like, cut it out, we're not having any of that, which I was like, first off, that's your cousin? Which, could we have established some historical context here in which, like, what does that mean to have relations with your cousin at this point in time? I don't know. But the last time that he had met the Duke of Sandringham was when he was at Castle Leoch when he was 16. He'd heard about the Duke's preferences, and he does experience it a little, and he leaves, he runs away in order to escape the Duke's advances. But the Duke is coming back, and when he reveals all of this, he does it in front of the Mackenzie clan, and they all kind of rib him and make fun of him. And as a modern woman, as somebody who finds all of this really revolting, I couldn't believe how they teased him about being assaulted by a grown man. Nobody seemed to sympathize with him or be truly sorry that this is what he experienced. Instead, they basically made fun of him and called him gay. But whatever. I'm trying to figure out when I need to stop. We're going to stop there, actually, because this review has gone long enough, and this truly could end up a 3-parter. So I will see you next time for part 2 of Outlander. Bye!